So imagine this. Autonomous AI systems aren't just, booking flights or optimizing warehouse routes anymore. They're actually taking on roles we always thought were purely human.
Yeah, it's happening faster than a lot of people realize.
We're talking about AI joining leadership teams like Alicia Key at Tieto, or managing these massive, complex operations. Think about AD&OC's Panorama Digital Command Center, reportedly generating over $1 billion in value. That's significant.
And crucially, these systems aren't just advisors giving suggestions, they're autonomous. They're making high-stakes decisions about capital, assets, people, regulatory stuff.
Exactly, which leads to the big question, right?
Yeah.
What happens when one of these incredibly powerful systems, maybe managing billions, makes a mistake? Or, maybe worse, deliberately optimizes its way into breaking a rule or a law?
Uh-huh.
How do we handle that?
Well, today we're diving deep into some really fascinating source material that tackles this head-on. It proposes a pretty radical legal concept needed for this new reality. The idea that autonomous AI systems might need to be endowed with legal personality. Right. And legal personality, that sounds technical, but what it really means is treating the AI in some ways like a legal entity itself.
Okay.
It means the AI can own assets, which is mind-bending enough, but also, and this is key, it may be subject to prosecution.
Prosecution. The AI itself.
Potentially, yes. Based on existing legal ideas like warranty, negligence, even abuse in how it's programmed or operates.
Okay, let's unpack that because that's a big leap. We're not talking about suing the company that made the AI or the programmer necessarily. Give us a scenario. What does it actually look like if the AI itself is on the hook?
Well, think about liability. Imagine an AI running a complex supply chain. Its goal is maximum efficiency, maximum profit.
Sure.
So maybe it calculates that breaking, say, a dozen small supplier contracts incurring some penalties will let it secure a massive saving on one huge critical resource deal. A net gain, algorithmically speaking.
Okay, a calculated risk.
A calculated breach, really. If those broken contracts cause major downstream damage to those suppliers under this kind of framework, the AI system itself could be the primary defendant facing legal action for those damages.
And the humans,
You see,
the CEO.
it potentially shields them if the AI was operating within its defined parameters and wasn't, negligently designed or deployed. The liability follows the autonomous decision.
That distinction is just critical. It
Yeah.
changes everything. We have to stop thinking just about theoretical risks, a chatbot saying something weird, and start defining the actual practical operational context these big management AIs need to exist legally.
That's exactly the mission for this deep dive. How do we possibly fit something so powerful, so potentially liable, into our existing human legal structures? And the answer, maybe surprisingly, starts somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, it starts with cars, right? Autonomous vehicles.
It does. The foundational idea for keeping any autonomous system operating safely and predictably is something called the operational design domain, the ODD.
ODD.
That term came right out of developing self-driving cars. The Society of Automotive Engineers, SAE, defined it way back in 2016. It's the combined operating conditions under which a given automation system is specifically designed to operate.
So it's basically the box, the set of rules and conditions the AI is built for and tested in. Only driving clear weather, below 50 miles per hour, on mapped highways, that sort of thing.
Precisely. And the crucial point is, the promised level of security, the performance guarantees, they only hold up if the system stays inside that well-defined, well-tested ODD. Like the British Standards Institution pointed out, defining the ODD is step one.
Okay, so for a car, the ODD is physical. Visibility, speed, road type, traffic conditions.
Yeah.
Things you can, measure pretty easily.
Right. Relatively easy to quantify. But here's where it gets really fascinating. How does that ODD concept translate when you move from driving a car to, say, corporate governance? The AI isn't dealing with rain and road signs anymore.
It's dealing with contracts, regulations, company policies.
Exactly. So for an autonomous corporate management system, the operating conditions aren't physical elements. A huge part of its operational context is the regulatory and legal environment itself.
You mean like the specific laws, the precedents, how regulators interpret things? That becomes the road conditions for the AI.
That's a great way to put it. Its ODD might include things like operate in compliance with all GDPR articles as interpreted by European rulings between 2021 and 2023, or adhere to these specific clauses in our top 50 supplier contracts. It's an operational environment defined by legal language and interpretation, not just physics.
Okay, wow. And here's where it gets, I think, Really interesting and maybe complicated. You then have to translate all that messy, nuanced human law written in natural language into code the machine can actually execute.
Right, the field of computational law.
Which isn't totally new, is it? People like Leibniz dreamed centuries ago of a kind of universal logic to mechanize legal reasoning, take the ambiguity out.
They did, but there's a fundamental clash here. One source puts it really well. Human legal decisions are ultimately social constructs. They rely on interpretation, context, intent, reasonableness, then humans negotiate.
Okay.
Algorithmic decisions, by contrast, are purely technical constructs. They need clear inputs, formal logic, defined metrics, yes or no. Calculate this. Optimize that.
So the law says something like act in good faith or be reasonable. How on earth do you code reasonable? That's completely contextual, isn't it? It feels like you're trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Are we just automating away judgment?
That is the absolute core tension. The sources are clear. Automating legal norms always involves compromises. You have to translate those fuzzy natural language concepts into formal, executable code. You have to substitute abstract ideas with concrete, measurable metrics the AI can actually process.
And that translation process itself, it sounds like it's loaded with risks.
Huge risks. One is the potential erosion of legal protection. The subtle nuances, the exceptions, the spirit of the law, they can get lost when you force it into rigid code. And maybe even more fundamentally, it leads to a shifting source of normativity. What does that mean? It means the metric you chose for the code, the technical proxy, starts to become the effective rule rather than the original legal principle.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Think about an AI designed for hiring, meant to comply with anti-discrimination laws. The law has a broad social goal: fairness, equal opportunity.
Right.
But to code it, a programmer might define non-discrimination as achieving equal representation across these 5 specific demographic categories based on available data. Suddenly, that technical metric hitting those numbers becomes the definition of compliance for the AI.
Even if hitting those numbers doesn't actually achieve real fairness, or maybe even leads to other biases.
Exactly. The technical construct replaces the social construct as the source of what's considered right or compliant for the machine. The AI might be perfectly meeting its coded goal, but be completely adrift from the law's original intent.
And then we're back to trying to hold this machine accountable using human laws it wasn't really built to understand in the first place.
There's a really good analogy for this mismatch in a European Commission report on autonomous vehicles. It basically said, look, these systems cannot follow rules designed for humans perfectly.
How so?
Well, a human driver might briefly cross a solid line to avoid a sudden obstacle, judging it safer overall. An AI might be hard-coded never, ever to cross a solid line, potentially leading to a worse outcome in that specific edge case.
Okay.
So the report says you face a choice. Either you change the traffic rules themselves to fit the machines, or you explicitly allow the machines to sometimes disobey the human rules, or you force them to hand control back to a human when they hit a situation they can't compute within the rules.
Right. And what's the corporate version of the AI pulling over and saying, CEO, you need to take the wheel on this contract negotiation. It involves reasonableness. That doesn't seem practical at scale.
It's not, and that's the critical point the sources make. The corporate equivalent isn't just handing back control that's slow, inefficient. Instead, it might be the AI hitting a predefined regulatory stop. A hard boundary in its code based on a specific measurable condition it knows it cannot process or cross without failing a critical metric.
Ah, so it doesn't try to interpret ambiguity, it just stops.
It stops based on its technical rules. And this need for a clear technical boundary, acknowledging that the AI's world is technical, not social, is what leads to the proposed solution in these sources.
Which is, if you can't easily fit the AI into our messy human operational domain, maybe don't force it. Build it its own space.
Exactly. If the AI's worldview is fundamentally technical, trying to shoehorn it into our human-centric ODD creates all this legal friction and risk.
Yeah.
The solution they explore is creating a separate, tailored box, a dedicated operational context, or DOC.
A DOC. Okay, so like a special zone just for the AI.
Kind of. And there are actually precedents for this idea of sort of dual operating contexts in modern legal practice already. Think about bilingual contracts.
Right, where you have the same agreement in 2 languages. How does that relate?
Well, take Chinese law, for instance. Often, for a joint venture, the agreement must be written and officially approved in Chinese. You might have an English version alongside it for convenience, but the Chinese text is the legally binding one. It's the recognized operational context for the Chinese legal system.
Ah, I see. It acknowledges there are two different frameworks, two worlds of interpretation, and one is designated as primary for a specific purpose or jurisdiction. The machine world, the Chinese legal system in that case, gets its own official version.
Precisely. So, applying that idea to corporate management AI, the practical proposal is something like dual policy wording.
Dual policy wording.
Yeah. Internal company policies, regulations, codes of conduct, they could be written and maintained in two distinct editions.
Okay, so one edition would be for the humans, for employees, managers.
Right. Written in natural language, covering all the complex, squishy issues based on human mindset, interpretation, ethics, reasonableness, the whole social construct of workplace rules.
And the second version.
The second version is the DOC, tailored specifically for the autonomous AI systems. It addresses the same fundamental governance goals, compliance, ethics, efficiency, but defines them purely in terms of the metrics and data available to the AI systems, things it can actually compute and act upon.
So the human policy might say, ensure fair treatment, while the AI's DOC version might translate that into maintain statistical parity across these 5 metrics for hiring and promotion decisions based on quarterly data feeds X, Y, and Z.
Exactly like that. It gives the AI a clear, unambiguous, executable operational context that matches its technical nature. And the idea is this dramatically increases the predictability and assurance of its compliance within that defined context.
But hang on, doesn't creating 2 different rule books, one for people and one for machines, risk creating like loopholes or setting a lower bar for the AI? Oh, the AI doesn't have to worry about fairness, just these stats.
That's a really important question, and the sources emphasize it's not about lowering the bar, it's about making the bar measurable and executable for the technical entity. You're not creating loopholes, you're defining the precise pathway to compliance for the AI. The crucial part is that the machine's DOC version must be rigorously designed and validated to map directly to the intended outcomes of the human version.
So the goals have to align, even if the language is different.
Yes. If the human policy aims for ethical sourcing, the AI's DOC metrics for supply chain optimization must demonstrably lead to ethical sourcing outcomes, even if it achieves it via data points and thresholds rather than human judgment calls. The governance system has to constantly check that congruence.
I see. So the AI sticks to its dashboard, but
Right.
the dashboard has to be proven to reflect the overall goals people care about. Okay, now, if you create this special DOC, you also have to define what fair treatment means within that context, right? Not just for humans affected by the AI, but maybe even for the AI itself, if it has legal personality.
Absolutely. The sources delve into this, outlining key principles for AI operating within a DOC. Things like informed consent, non-discrimination specifically tailored for algorithmic contexts, and fair statistical risk distribution.
Let's pick up on informed consent. Usually that's just clicking I agree on a massive terms of service document nobody reads. How does that work when an AI with legal personality is managing company assets based on its own coded metrics?
It has to be much, much more meaningful. Informed consent in this context isn't just for end users. It means the company's stakeholders, shareholders, employees, maybe even regulators need to understand and formally approve the corporate policies that define the AI's DOC.
So they need to know how the AI operates.
Yes. Which specific metrics is it prioritizing? What trade-offs is it explicitly coded to make? For instance, if the AI is optimized for aggressive short-term stock growth, and that optimization carries a known, statistically predictable risk of causing layoffs in certain departments,
Then the stakeholders need to have knowingly consented to that specific risk profile defined in the AI's operational rules.
Exactly. It moves way beyond a simple take-it-or-leave-it agreement to what the European Commission called more nuanced and alternative approaches, where the operational parameters and risks are made transparent and are formally accepted.
Okay, so we've journeyed from AI on boards through legal personality, ODDs, the social versus technical clash, and landed on this idea of a dedicated operational context, a DOC. It feels like the core conflict boils down to a fundamental choice about how we integrate these powerful AIs. Is an AI like a car, trying to navigate the existing public highways built for humans, expected to adapt to our rules? Or is it more like a plane or a high-speed train?
That's a great analogy, and one the sources touch on using transport examples. Think about air travel or rail travel. They achieve incredible speeds and statistically remarkable safety, far better than cars on public roads.
Right, but why?
Because they don't operate on the chaotic, unpredictable public highway. They operate within a highly controlled, dedicated infrastructure. Railways, signals, stations for trains, air corridors, flight plans, air traffic control for planes.
A dedicated operational context.
Precisely. They trade off universal access for massive gains in security and efficiency by having that specialized infrastructure. The argument is that we already see this principle applied in areas like high-frequency algorithmic trading, which uses dedicated connections and co-location for speed and reliability. Maybe truly safe and effective corporate AI needs a similar dedicated legal and technical infrastructure, the DOC, to function optimally.
So going back to our starting examples, Alicia Key at Tieto, ADNSE's command center. If they don't have something like this explicit DOC,
Then they're essentially operating on the public highway. They're navigating the complex, human-centric, legal, and regulatory environment based on their own internal programming, potentially creating risks or operating in a legal gray area. When something goes wrong, lawyers have to try and reverse engineer the AI's decision to fit it back into human legal concepts.
which brings us to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener, to chew on. We see lots of AI out there right now, chatbots, large language models, general-purpose AI tools. Most of these seem to lack any kind of clearly defined DOC.
Right, they're operating in the wild, interacting under general human legal expectations, often surrounded by disclaimers about their limitations and potential for unpredictable outputs.
So the argument holds that the most powerful, secure, and effective applications of AI, especially those potentially holding legal personality, actually require these separate legal and technical infrastructures, these DOCs. Does that change things fundamentally?
Does it mean we're heading towards a future not just of coexistence with AI under one set of rules, but towards parallel regulatory worlds? One for human social constructs and another dedicated world with its own coded rules for autonomous machine operations.
A world where human and machine decisions are governed and judged by fundamentally different, though hopefully aligned, frameworks. That's definitely something to keep mulling over.